Hi everyone, and welcome to the tutorial series for the Animal Behavior Kit. In this video we'll be taking a look at the needs system. That is going to include how to configure the hunger settings, the thirst settings, and if you're a predator, the hunting settings to look for prey nearby when you get hungry. So without wasting too much time, let's go ahead and jump to Unreal. And if you've been following this series sequentially, you'll know that in the previous video, we looked at all of the engaged behaviors, including some specialized behaviors like the defend for the bear, for example, and some of the behaviors like hide for the deer that were hiding, looking for places that are out of line of sight. So right now, we've gone over some of the default settings. And now we're going to take a look at the needs system as one of the many different systems that are included in ABK. So if you go to the top level folder ABK, go into Blueprints, AI, Components, and then in this case Ground Animals, and you'll see a bunch of different components here. We're going to take a look at all of these components in their own separate videos. But right now, we are interested in the component needs system, needs system. And we are going to take it step by step. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to grab this bear, and we want to make sure that he doesn't bother us. We're gonna make sure that we test it with deer first. So we are going to make this guy stay in place and engage behavior as ignore. Then let's go over to the deer here, and let's just go ahead and delete two of these guys. We don't really need them. We just need kind of the original doe. And for this one, we are going to again select ignore for the engaged behavior. We don't want it to do anything, and we're going to leave this as random. Go to random location within bounds, which is going to be this guy over here. And for the sake of keeping things, to make sure that we can actually see things better, we are going to hide the marker. So you're not going to be able to actually see the volume as we're playing here. And let's do the same thing for the POIs as well. And the reason for that is because we want to see the animal kind of come here and eat the food that's going to be here in the bush, or when he gets thirsty, come to the to the water level here and drink. So we don't want to be able to see the volume here. So what we're going to do here is if you click on the animal here, you can do it in two separate ways. You can add it to this individual animal here. You can type, you can click on add component, and you can start typing comp, underscore need. BP comp, there we go. I'm not sure what was happening here. BP comp needs system, and it'll automatically add it to this animal here. And you can see immediately that we have all of the different options here. Or if you wanted to do it a different way, let's go ahead and delete it. You could click on edit the actual blueprint here, and you could add it here, need system. And that means that we will automatically be included on all of the copies of our animal BP underscore doe underscore tutorial. So now if we click on the animal, you'll see that now we have BP comp need system right here underneath character movement. And you can see that it is in blue because it is inherited, meaning it is already part of the blueprint. So you can do it in two separate ways. It doesn't really make a difference. For you to access the settings, all you need to do is click on comp underscore need system, and then you'll see here that you have options in the setup and in the debug. It is as simple as that. So a couple of things that you'll notice, every single actor component or system is going to have a Boolean that is going to explicitly mention whether this system is active. So even if this system is part of the deer now, If I duplicate the deer, I can always come to this copy of the deer and explicitly disable the need system for this guy here while having it enabled for this guy over here. Again, this is for flexibility, right? We want to give you guys as much flexibility as possible. Or in your game, if you're writing custom code, maybe you want to activate the need system when something happens. So you can write custom code to cast to this guy here, grab the component, and then make it active, right? That's another option. So right now we're gonna say that it is active. The needs timer is how often do we check our needs. We're gonna leave it at 1, is every second. That makes it really smooth, as you're gonna see the bars going down. Every second they're gonna be updated. But you can change this to a different number, say every 2 seconds, if you're really concerned about performance. You have the option of showing or hiding the HUD, and you're not gonna see anything until you hit play here, but by default you wanna show it, meaning that you're gonna see the green and the blue bars here. And then you have 2 different areas here, one for hunger and one for thirst. Then you can expand. So if you open hunger, you'll see again that you have hunger specifically being active or inactive. And for thirst, you'll see the exact same options. So not only can you deactivate the entire system, but you can select which part of the system is actually active. So if you really don't care about thirst, you can deactivate thirst and only use the hunger part of the system here. Or you can do the opposite, right? Again, to give you flexibility. So right now, we are only going to look at hunger. So go ahead and deactivate thirst, just because we want to make sure that we can see how hunger works. And then we're going to see that we have several options here. The first one is eating time. How long will the animal spend eating? And keep in mind that while the animal is eating, it'll be playing an animation. We're gonna go over that in a separate video, all of the different animations here. But you can specify which eating animation the animal will play. And this is going to be the amount of time that the animal will stay while eating. Then you have a total timer, time to total hunger. In other words, it'll take 300 seconds, right? Or 5 minutes, right? For the animal to be completely starved. And then as the hunger ticks down, right? This is basically a timer that goes down 300, 299, 298. You're gonna see this bar going down, 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 meaning this goes from being completely full to going completely hungry. There is a hunger threshold where the animal will start searching for food. So right now, what we're saying is when the total hunger hits 20%, you need to start looking for food. And then we have the option of actually dying from hunger. If the animal cannot find food in time and the timer hits 0, meaning the total hunger hits 0, the animal actually dies. So we don't have time to wait for 5 minutes, obviously. So let's go ahead and make this 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, the animal will look for food, actually slightly before 30 seconds, because we're gonna start looking for food at 20% of that 30 seconds. And once we find food, we're gonna be eating for 10 seconds. Now remember, in one of the previous videos, we automatically spawned all of the AI food on our bushes in the level, right? So what this is going to do is going to look for food that is nearby, and whatever is nearest is going to go there and start eating. So again, we go to comp need system, and let's go ahead and hit play. And you see now that as we follow our little test subject here, the green bar, as you can see here, is going down, while the blue bar is staying completely full. Remember, we deactivated thirst and we only have hunger that is being active. So hunger is going down, and as soon as it hits that 20%, which is going to be very, very soon, the animal will look for food and it'll find the nearest food, and in this case it's going to be this little bush, and for 10 seconds it'll go ahead and eat. And while it's eating, it'll play the animation for eating. Once it's full, you can see that the green bar goes to full, and then the animal roams around and the bar again goes down slowly. In this case, because it is 30 seconds, we are obviously seeing this play out very quickly here. But normally you probably have about 5 minutes. I think it's probably about right. So they're not constantly looking for food. They actually can do whatever else they need to do. But you can see here, as soon as they hit that threshold, again, it'll get the nearest bush, which is food, and it'll start eating. Notice that the animation is also really crappy, guys. This is something I made in Blender. This is the equivalent of programmer art. So please don't take the quality of the animation as indication of the kit. You can have really nice animations if you have an animator or you know how to do it yourself. Or you can purchase some animations from the marketplace that have the animal eating. Then you can play that and it'll look really nice, right? I just wanted to make sure that there was something that would indicate that the animal was eating. So I did what I could in Blender. So you can see here that the animal is kind of just going down. This is the same animation that will be used when the animal is drinking. Again, because I'm just using a sample animation here. So let's go back here to the neat system. And now let's deactivate hunger and go to thirst. And the same thing, drinking time, you have the exact same options here. So let's go ahead and pick 30 seconds one more time. And then drinking time is going to be 10 seconds. And let's click on play. And the same thing is going to happen. The green bar is now completely full. It's not moving. But the blue bar is slowly ticking down. Right? That's the kind of the thirst level. And when it hits 10%, that's a slightly lower threshold. It'll now look for water. And in this case, there's only one body of water in the entire level, and that's going to be this little lake right here. So because we're using a spline, what this AI is doing is getting the nearest location in the world to that spline, and it's getting close to it, and then it's going and drinking. Now you can see here that after 10 seconds, the little blue bar is going to fill up. There you go. And now the animal is going to go back to roaming again. Notice that the animal didn't come exactly towards the water, and that's because the blockers, as you can remember, are blocking the nav mesh up to here. If you press P to look at the nav mesh, notice that the animal cannot come any closer than this area right here. So even though the water is here, the animal simply cannot come here, right? So the way you can adjust that is when you're building your spline, you can make sure that you build it more towards inside the water, so there's a clear edge. Or in this case, if you want to do the you know, kind of in a quick and dirty way, you can just raise the water level a little bit, and now you notice that we're essentially getting the animal to come closer to the water. You see that? Obviously that feels a little bit kind of more hacky, right? The better way would be, instead of moving the water, to simply get the edge to be very close to the water, or maybe slightly below the water level, so then the edges are working nicely. But that is one way that you can debug and you can figure out, why is my animal not going to the water? Well, the reason is because the nav mesh is cutting right here, and the animal simply cannot get to the water. Notice that based on the slope, there's going to be areas that the animal can't reach. So if it's really steep, that right there is not part of the nav mesh for the animal, right? So keep all of these things in mind. I'm spending some time helping you understand why things work in a certain way, so you can debug your game yourself, right? And again, you can bring the nav mesh by pressing P on your keyboard, and that way you can see what's going on. All right, so let's go back to PowerPoint, and we looked at hunger, we looked at thirst, right before we look at hunting, I want to show you what happens if you want the animal to die. So if we go back to clump neat system and we say that we want the animal to die from thirst, let's say that the threshold is going to be much smaller, 0.01%. In other words, only when the timer hits 0.01% of the 30 seconds, only then start looking for water. But if you don't get water before that timer hits 0, the animal will die. And this is almost guaranteed to happen now because the threshold is so small, right? So 1%, when you only have 1% left, only then start looking for water. So if I hit play here, the AI is gonna again roam around, do its thing. Remember, this is the regular roam behavior, and the system is working in the background while the AI is just minding its own business. You can see that the water is going down, 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 right? It's gonna take a total of 30 seconds to go to 0. The water is going very, very low, but the threshold is so low that only at the very end, as you can see, the AI only had time to literally just turn towards the body of water, and then immediately it died out of thirst. That isn't the default. I personally don't really like that option too much, but I know that depending on your game, you may want that option to be there for realism purposes, right? So if that is the case, if the timer here is much bigger, like 150 seconds, for example, or 300 seconds or whatever, the threshold may be higher, like 30%, for example, then at that point, I think it'll be probably easier to use die from thirst or hunger, for example. And at that point, you know, if the animal still can't reach the water or get food, then it'll just die, right? Cool. So we've looked at hunger, we've looked at thirst, but notice that we have one more option at the bottom called prey search radius, and that is specifically used for predators, right? So how does the neat system know if it needs to look for predators or needs to look for AI food? Well, that's based on the animal details that we looked at in an earlier video, where you specify whether the animal is a predator or a prey. Right? So right here. So if we go to behavior general, right here, you can see that we have, whoops, it's actually not here. My mistake is in setup behavior. If you go under behavior details, you have feeding behavior, prey versus predator, all right? So now let's go ahead and leave this guy alone to do its thing. Actually, you know what? No, we don't want to do that. Just to make things easier, let's go ahead and remove the neat system, or not remove it. Let's deactivate it completely. And let's make sure that this guy is going to stay still, right? So we want this to stay in place and ignore. So it's just literally going to stay here. And now let's grab this bear. And let's add a need system to him, and we're going to do it in this way, need system. Now notice that this is added only to the instance of this bear, so the class itself doesn't have it, right? It's not inherited, it's only to this specific bear in the world. If I were to drag another bear, it would not have need system. In this case, I want the system to be active. I want to deactivate thirst. Is going to be the exact same as the deer is going to look for a body of water. But now, because this is a predator, right? If we go to the behaviors here and we'll look at feeding behaviors as predator, when we go to the need system, we're actually going to search for prey. And what's going to happen is we are going to do a sphere trace with a radius of whatever number you have here. In this case, it's 10,000. So it's going to be a massive trace. And then it's going to grab all of the different pawns that are there. And it's going to compare the tags on that pawn versus the engaged tags. So right now, it's going to look for a player and it's only going to try to attack the player to feed. So in this case, we don't want that. We want to change that to deer. We want this guy to hunt for the deer, right? So right now, when the bear gets hungry, it'll eventually cast a trace, and if it hits anything, it'll check whether it has the tags in the engage, and the tag is deer. It'll find the deer, and then it'll actually go ahead and attack the deer. So let's go back and change this to 30 seconds again for demonstration purposes. Hunger is active, thirst is inactive. The prey radius is 10,000, so it's definitely going to find it. And we can even do debug prey search. If you want to debug it, you can see the trace, right? And as soon as that happens and we click and actually let's make sure that this guy is standing still, stay in place and ignore. We want this to be attack, right? The engaged behavior is attack. It wants to attack the deer. Okay, now we go ahead and hit play, and you can see that this guy is ignoring me because I'm not as part of its engage tag. Oops. But notice his hunger is going down slowly, so you can see it here. There you go. And then when it hits a critical level, you'll see that it does a trace, it finds the deer, and then it'll quickly attack the deer. There you go. You can see the massive trace right here, and you can see that the bear found the deer and is attacking it right now. You can see that the bear is pretty much starved at this point, but it's not dying because we don't have that option selected. The bear killed the deer, and notice that the hunger now replenished. It goes all the way to full. It'll disengage for a few seconds, and then right now the bear is going back to its roaming behavior, which in this case is stay in place. If you had the roaming behavior as go to random location, then it'll just pick a random location and move on. So that's pretty much it, guys. You can play around with the range, right? The prey radius, again, by default is 10,000, which is pretty dang big. But if you wanted to limit this to maybe like a radius of 5,000 or whatever, you can certainly do that. And remember, this is a multi-sphere trace, meaning that if you have several different deer everywhere, it'll actually pick the nearest location that is navigable. So if you have a deer that is right here, for example, and the bear cannot reach the deer, even if that is the closest one, it'll actually ignore it because it cannot actually reach it. So it's actually a pretty smart system. It'll grab all of the actors that are nearby that can be reached, and then it'll get the nearest actor. It'll sort all of the actors, get the nearest actor, and then go to that nearest actor. And how do you know, again, which actors are going to be picked to be attacked? They are using the same engage tags that we talked about before. So the attack, the engage behavior, and the need system in this case are very closely knit because they're attacking the same kinds of animals. So again, once you set up your engage tags for your animals and you set it up real nice for your game, all you need to do to have your predators hunt for prey is add the need system and configure the trace radius, and it'll automatically work out of the box. Alright guys, that is pretty much it. There is a custom need, and that's going to be its own little separate video that allows you to add your own custom class in addition to hunger and thirst, and that was again one request from a user a couple of months ago. So even more flexibility. So not only can you have needs for thirst and hunger, you can actually have a custom need for your animals. That's going to be the next video. Alright guys, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.